The control of advertisements regulations under the planning legislation does allow A-boards on the forecourt, but the word is forecourt, if there is a forecourt. Now, in some cases there quite clearly is a shop forecourt. A pair of words often bandied around together, which probably shouldn't be bandied around very often, is the word private forecourt, because they're very often not private. If one thinks about the way that Georgian houses, with their coal holes under the pavement, a basement area and then a ground floor premises, was adapted to become shops in the Georgian and Victorian period, with the basement area covered over, very often with cellar flaps or a different form of paving. And then on redevelopment in the early 20th century, they often had things like the lenscrete pavement lights, where you get little glass squares or circles in concrete that let light down into the basement area. Underneath is that basic Georgian development pattern. But the highway has been adopted over the coal hole, but over the slab up to the shop front, it isn't adopted. It's private, and it keeps the rain out of the basement area. However, if somebody's walked up to that shop window for more than 20 years, or in the case of 40 years, it becomes absolute under the Prescription Act, then you can argue that that has become part of the highway network by prescription. Even under the planning legislation, if it's been used as such for 10 years or more, it becomes established as the use. So it's arguable that those areas of private structure that people have walked over for a number of years to get up to a shop front have become a privately owned part of the highway network, just like a footpath over a farmer's field has become part of the network when it becomes a public footpath in the countryside. So, therefore, we have this odd situation of either unadopted highway, or as I prefer to call it, de facto highway, because by fact and degree it has become used as such, and that this area is often effectively part of the public highway network, or at least the public have rights to use it as if it were highway. Now, the main purpose of the highway is to get about without let or hindrance, so therefore any obstruction on it could be said to be something that shouldn't be there. However, highway authorities have the right to put things in to obstruct the highway if they're not actually undermining the original purpose. So we put things in. We call them trees. They give shade. We have lampposts. We have bus shelters, all to make life more civilized and more pleasant. But it's usually at the instruction of the highway authority, and bearing in mind that the highway authority should always leave that right to get people about safely. With the introduction of the Disability Discrimination Act, now enshrined in the Equalities Act 2010, there is a duty on the highway authority to make sure that people with disabilities aren't disadvantaged and have the same right to get about as people with full ability. That means that it's also a duty to take away problems that have been allowed to happen, and it's as bad to do nothing as it is to commission something new that introduces a barrier. This raises a question then of how one deals with A-boards, which shouldn't be on the adopted highway anyway, could be on a forecourt, but if it's one of these funny areas of de facto highway, it's arguable that the A-board shouldn't be there either.